My name is Linda Myers. I'm 30 years old, and the last gift my mother ever gave me was a choice: my sister or the door. I chose the door. I was 18. My savings account had just been emptied down to $0, and everything I still owned fit in one backpack. For 5 years after that night, nobody in my family dialed my number. Then, on a Tuesday in March, my mom called me in tears and said the sentence she'd apparently been saving up: "Your sister needs you." When I finally found out the real reason behind that phone call, I sat alone in my car in a hospital parking lot and laughed until my ribs hurt. But here's what none of them knew. The laughing part wasn't the ending. It was barely the beginning. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where quiet people finally get to tell their side. Stories about family, betrayal, and the moment somebody decides enough is enough. If you have ever been called the strong one right before they handed you the bill, this story is for you. Drop a comment below, tell me where you're listening from, and be sure to subscribe, because you won't want to miss how this one ends. I grew up in a 2-story house outside Columbus, Ohio, with a cross-stitched sign in the living room that said "Family First." My mother, Carol, stitched it herself. I used to believe it. It took me years to notice the sign never said which family member came first. That house ran on a simple system, and the system had 2 jobs in it. My sister Vanessa, 4 years older than me, held the first job: being fragile. She was the pretty one, the sensitive one, the one whose feelings could be injured by a weather report. Her job came with full benefits. My job was the other one. When Vanessa was 12 and knocked my mother's casserole dish off the counter, I was 8, and I was the one handed the broom. Nobody announced it. It was just understood, the way you understand which chair is Dad's. When I brought home straight A's, the report card stayed on the refrigerator about 3 days. Vanessa's certificate for participating in a middle school choir hung framed in the hallway for a decade. I'm not saying my parents didn't love me. I'm saying their love for me came in one flavor, and the flavor was confidence. Confidence that I'd manage, confidence that I'd cope, adjust, absorb, and clean up. In our house, "You're so strong" was never a compliment that stood on its own. I learned to flinch when I heard it, the way a waitress flinches when a table of 12 walks in. Because in the Myers family, praise for me always traveled with luggage. Somebody was about to hand me something heavy, and the compliment was the receipt. I just didn't know yet how heavy the luggage could get. I found out the spring I turned 18. At 15, I got a job running a register at Hartman's Grocery, 4 evenings a week plus Saturdays. I had one goal, and it was laminated: nursing school. The bank wouldn't let a minor open a savings account alone, so my mother co-signed as joint owner. That detail matters. Write it down somewhere. For 3 years, I deposited almost every paycheck. Birthday money went in. Christmas money went in. I skipped the class trip to Chicago and put that in too. By the spring of my senior year, the balance read $9,300. I used to look at that number the way other girls looked at prom dresses. Meanwhile, Vanessa was running her own experiment in the opposite direction. She started community college and left after 1 semester. She married a long-haul trucker named Cole a month after meeting him, had a baby girl named Lily at 21, and separated from Cole before Lily could walk. She and the baby lived in an apartment 15 minutes from my parents, and my parents paid for most of it. Quietly. The way you pay a bill you're embarrassed by. I loved Lily from the first day. I want that on the record. That tiny girl with the serious eyes had no role in what her mother did. The week I turned 17 and a half, I circled a date on my calendar. My 18th birthday. The day I could finally open my own account. In my own name, with my own single signature on it. I wasn't paranoid. I was raised in that house. I was fluent in it. I planned to move every dollar the morning I turned 18. My mother beat me to it by 9 days. I found out at an ATM outside Hartman's on a Thursday after my shift. I'd stopped to deposit my check like always. The machine spit out a receipt, and the receipt said my available balance was $0.00. I stood there in my work polo reading that slip of paper like it was written in a foreign language. I actually fed my card back in and checked again, because a mistake seemed more possible than the truth. Then I drove to the house, walked into the kitchen, and set the receipt on the table in front of my mother. She didn't even pretend to be surprised. She was drying a pot, and she kept drying it. She said Vanessa was 4 months behind on rent. She said the car was about to be repossessed, and a mother with a baby cannot be without a car. She said the word family the way other people say, obviously. My father studied the salt shaker like it owed him money. I asked when they were planning to tell me. My mother finally set the pot down and gave me the look she saved for when I was being difficult, which in our house meant inconvenient. She said they were going to explain everything at dinner. She said Vanessa was in a crisis, and crises don't wait for birthdays. And then she said the sentence that ran my whole childhood, the sentence I could stitch on a pillow from memory. "You're the strong one, Linda. You'll be fine." No mention of paying it back. None. That was the part that reorganized something in my chest. It wasn't a loan in their minds. It had never been my money in their minds. It was the family's emergency fund. And I was the family's emergency employee. And the emergency was always, always going to be Vanessa. I did not scream. I went upstairs and made phone calls because even at 18, that was who I was. The bank was polite and useless. Joint account, joint owner, every withdrawal legal as sunlight. The woman on the line was very kind. People are usually kind when they're handing you nothing. Friday morning, I called the police non-emergency line and described it, and the officer sighed the sigh of a man who'd heard this exact story before. "If her name's on the account," he said, "it's not theft. There's no crime here, miss. Just family." I want to be clear about this part, because people love to ask why I didn't fight it. I did fight it. I lost in under 24 hours on the merits, to a rule book my mother had signed us into when I was 15. Saturday, my parents called me down to the kitchen. On the table sat a typed piece of paper. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. The header said family loan agreement, but the text underneath said the $9,300 had been my voluntary gift to my sister, offered freely, no repayment expected. All it needed was my signature. My mother held out a pen and explained that signing would let us all move forward without ugliness. I asked what happened if I didn't sign. My mother's voice went flat and smooth, like a frozen lake. "Under this roof, we are a family. If you can't live with that, Linda, there's the door." I looked at my father. He looked at the table. I went up to my room, and I pulled my old backpack out of the closet, and I started folding. You'd be surprised what makes the cut when your whole life has to fit in one bag. 2 work polos, jeans, my documents in a plastic folder, birth certificate, social security card, and that ATM receipt, folded once, because some part of me already understood I might need proof someday that I wasn't crazy. And one photo, Lily at her first birthday, cake on her fists, laughing at something off camera. I took the picture of my sister's daughter and not one picture of my sister. Make of that what you will. I came downstairs. Nobody was posted at the door to stop me, which told me everything about how this movie was supposed to end. I was supposed to get scared on the porch and come back in and sign. My mother stayed in the kitchen. Through the doorway I could see her wiping a counter that was already clean. My father was standing in the garage doorway with his hands in his pockets. As I passed him, he pressed something into my palm without a word and then turned and studied the lawnmower. 2 folded $20 bills. $40. That was my father's entire testimony on the matter. I walked out to my car. Mine legally, thank God, bought used with cash, and titled in my name because Hartman's manager had warned me about exactly this. And I sat behind the wheel for 1 minute, waiting to feel something enormous. Here is what I actually felt. Quiet. It had taken them 19 years to teach me the lesson, but I finally had it word for word. Love, in that house, was a bill, and the bill was always addressed to me. I drove to my coworker Rachel's place and slept on her couch. Nobody called. Here's the 5 years. Fast, because I refused to make it sound sadder than it was. I slept on Rachel's couch for 6 weeks and paid her in groceries. I took a certified nursing assistant course. 6 weeks, cheapest ticket into healthcare that exists, and started working at a rehab facility, wiping down handrails and learning that bodies and families fail in similar ways. I worked 2 jobs and knocked out my prerequisites at community college one class at a time. At 20, I got into a 2-year nursing program on a partial scholarship and a federal loan. I studied in break rooms. I studied in my car. At 22, I passed my boards on the first try, and I cried in the parking lot of the testing center, which is the only place I permitted crying that entire era. By 23, I was a pediatric nurse at a children's hospital in Columbus, and I'd just signed a lease on a 2-bedroom apartment. The second bedroom was going to be an office. Remember that. It matters later. Now, the other ledger. In 5 years, my family called me 0 times. Not on my birthday, not at Christmas, not when I graduated with my nursing pin, which the local paper printed, with my name spelled right. I kept count the whole way. Nurses are good at charts. I'd love to tell you I healed the deeper thing too, but honesty is the house style here. I just relocated it. I became the nurse who covered everyone's shifts. 4 years without a real vacation. Being needed was the only language of love I'd ever been taught, and I still spoke it fluently. I'd only changed who I spoke it to. Then, one Tuesday night in March, I was 23. My phone rang at 9:40. The screen said a number I hadn't seen in 5 years but knew the way you know your own hand. The house line. My parents were the last 2 people in Ohio still paying for a landline, which tells you how they felt about change in general. I stood in my kitchen in scrubs, holding a cup of tea going cold, and let it ring 3 times before something older than my judgment picked it up for me. My mother was crying before I said hello. Real crying. I want to be fair, the tears were real. My mother's tears were always real. They were just never spent on me. Linda, thank God. Your sister needs you. No hello. No happy late birthday, 5 of them. No how are you? Are you safe? Did you eat? Where do you live? I stood very still and listened to 4 minutes of weather from a country I'd emigrated out of. Vanessa was in trouble. Vanessa was overwhelmed. Vanessa was fragile. This could destroy Vanessa. The call was about my sister, the way every call in that house had ever been about my sister. My own name mostly showed up attached to a verb they needed done. I noticed my hands were perfectly steady. That scared me more than the call. Needs me for what? I finally asked. And my mother's crying downshifted, smooth as an automatic transmission, into the warm managerial tone I remembered from the kitchen table. Come home Sunday, she said. We'll explain everything as a family. There it was. That word again, back from the dead, addressed to me like the last 5 years were a scheduling mix-up. I didn't say yes. I said the other thing, the thing that changed everything. Give me the caseworker's name. Silence on a landline has a particular sound, like the whole house holding its breath. Then my mother said, too quickly, that it wasn't like that it was just a misunderstanding with some agency people. Agency people. That's when my stomach understood before I did. This wasn't rent money. There was a child in this story. I told her goodnight, and at 8 o'clock the next morning, on my day off, I called Franklin County Children's Services and asked for the caseworker on the file for Lily Cole. Being a pediatric nurse opens that particular phone tree faster than most. I knew which words to say and which extension to ask for. The caseworker's name was Dana Alvarez. She had a voice like a woman with 40 files on her desk and no time to decorate any sentence, and I trusted her within a minute on that basis alone. Here is what she was allowed to tell me, and what my mother had somehow not mentioned at all. 3 weeks earlier, on a Friday night, Vanessa had left Lily home alone in her apartment and driven to a casino across the county line with a boyfriend. Lily was 6. A neighbor heard a child crying through the wall around midnight and called 911. Police found her alone, on the couch, with the television on, and a box of dry cereal. Vanessa came home at noon on Saturday. She was charged with child endangering, a misdemeanor, first offense, and the county opened a case. Lily had been staying with my parents since. I wrote it all down on the back of an electric bill, in block letters, the way you chart a patient you can't afford to get wrong. Then Alvarez said, "There's a complication with the grandparents' home study. Are you calling as a placement option?" I told her I didn't know yet what I was calling as. Then I spent 2 days finding out what complication meant, and that's when the laughing started. Piece 1 came from Alvarez. My parents' home study had failed, and the reason had nothing to do with their age or their finances. It failed because Vanessa had moved into their house, into my old room, which I'd find out later and file under details that no longer surprise me. And the county required that Vanessa, whose contact with Lily was supposed to be supervised, live elsewhere. My parents refused. My mother told the caseworker in writing that no one had the right to put her own daughter out of her home. Sit with that sentence a second. I have. Piece 2 came from my mother's next phone call, sweet as pie filling, when she finally laid out the family plan. "Linda, honey, it's all just paperwork. You have the clean record. You have the good job and the nice apartment. Lily gets registered at your address. The county checks their little boxes, and then things go back to normal. She'd stay with us and her mama most of the time, and you wouldn't hardly have to do a thing. You're the only one whose background comes up clean, honey. You work in that world. They'll listen to you." And there was the whole machine, laid out on a lit table. If nobody qualified, Lily went to foster care, and the county's clock was already running. They didn't want a daughter back. They wanted an address. A clean record to rent. The way you rent a storage unit. I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot after a 12-hour shift, and I laughed until my ribs hurt and my eyes ran, because I finally saw it. The clean record was the punchline. The stable job, the spotless background, the nurse's license, every single thing they needed from me existed because they had thrown me away. Their punishment had built their only exit, and they didn't even hear the joke. If you've ever gotten that phone call, the one where they suddenly remember your number because they need something, you know that laugh. It's not a happy sound. It's the sound of finally seeing the whole machine at once. If you've heard it too, tell me in the comments below and hit subscribe, because what my family asked me to do next deserves witnesses. I didn't laugh long. Somewhere across town there was a 6-year-old sleeping in a house run by the same 2 roles that had chewed up her mother and me both, just from different ends. And a county clock was running toward a stranger's spare bedroom. So on Monday, I called Dana Alvarez back and said a sentence I had rehearsed in the shower like a speech. I'd like to be evaluated as a kinship placement, the real kind. Full home study, background check, no shortcuts. I heard her pen stop. Then I said the second part, slower, because the second part was the actual decision. "And anything my family tells you, verify with me directly. From now on, everything I do in this case happens in daylight." Alvarez was quiet a moment. People in her job can hear the difference between a volunteer and a recruit. I think she was checking which one I was. Then she started listing requirements in her flat checklist voice: fingerprints, references, income verification, home inspection. And honest to God, the list relaxed me. Rules are just fairness with the emotion drained off, and I had been starving for fairness my whole life. My mother called that night to see if I'd come around. I said I would do it for Lily. "The real version," I said, "not the paper version." My mother exhaled a long, satisfied breath and said she knew I'd step up. She'd told everyone I would. I was always the strong one. I let her have that. Some people you correct. Some people you just stop translating for. She heard yes and hung up happy. She had absolutely no idea we had just agreed to 2 different stories, and only one of us could be right. Sunday, I drove out to the house to meet the stakes. 5 years away, and the house had not moved an inch. Family First still hung over the couch. Vanessa's choir certificate still hung in the hallway, gold sticker fading. And in the middle of it, my sister came at me with her arms wide, crying my name like the last 5 years were a road trip I'd taken. She looked older than 27 around the eyes. "I always told people my little sister would come through," she announced to the room, hugging me, and I stood there being hugged and heard the sentence for what it was. Not gratitude. A job posting. Filled. My mother beamed at the reunion she planned to describe at church. My father held his coffee mug like a man at a bus stop in weather. And on the far end of the couch, taking up as little space as a person can take, sat a 6-year-old with her ankles crossed and her hands in her lap. Lily. She had Vanessa's coloring and none of Vanessa's noise. I watched her that whole visit, and this is what a pediatric nurse sees. A kid who tracked every adult in the room like a little air traffic controller. She got her own water from the tap, standing on a stool someone had put there for exactly that purpose, drank it, washed the cup, dried it, and put it away. 6. Nobody noticed but me, because in that house self-sufficiency in a child wasn't a flag, it was a convenience. I knew that ankle-crossed stillness from old family photos. Mine. When I got up to leave, Lily slid off the couch and followed me to the door, and stood there working up the courage. Then, very quietly, looking at my knees, she asked, "Are you the aunt with the apartment?" So they'd talked about the plan in front of her. 6 years old, and she already knew she was a package with a shipping question. I crouched down, said yes, I'm your Aunt Linda, and told her my apartment had a whole bedroom nobody was using. She nodded once, filing it, and walked back to her end of the couch. I drove home doing math on the county's clock. Then the county came to do math on me. If you've never been through a kinship home study, here's the flavor. 2 months of proving to strangers, with documents, that your life holds weight. Fingerprints rolled at a BCI office. My income? Verified. My lease? Copied. My references? 3. None of them related to me, which was the easiest requirement I've ever met, since no one related to me had spoken to me in 5 years. A worker walked my apartment checking window locks and smoke alarms and asked where the child would sleep, and I stood in the doorway of my office that never was and heard myself say, "Her room is right here." I moved my desk to the living room that weekend. I switched from night shift to days, which cost me the differential pay. First real money this fight took from me, and I want it noted I paid it without blinking. And one afternoon, across my own kitchen table, Alvarez looked up from her clipboard and asked the question that wasn't on it. "Why did you leave home at 18? I gave it to her straight and short. The savings account, the paper I wouldn't sign, the door. She wrote for a while, longer than my answer. I didn't know then what that note would turn into. I found out in November. While the paperwork ground along, the county approved weekend visits, and that's how I learned who Lily Cole actually was. The first Saturday, she walked into my apartment carrying her own duffel and toured the place like a health inspector. Silent, thorough, touching nothing. Then she stood in the kitchen and asked me 3 questions, in order, like she'd drafted them in the car. Which food am I allowed to eat? I opened a cabinet and told her that shelf was hers, and anything with a blue sticker was fair game any time without asking. Where do I go when you have company? I said nowhere. This is your place too. If I ever had company, she'd be the company I introduced first. She turned that one over like a coin she suspected was fake. What happens if I break something? And there it was, the whole biography in one question. I took a glass out of the cabinet, handed it to her, and told her the truth. Things break. We sweep. Nobody eats a broom over it. Then I gave her a plastic cup, told her it was unbreakable, and said the world record for dropping it was 11 times and she was welcome to try for 12. That got me the first almost smile. She dropped it 9 times before dinner, but Saturday night told me the real story. I passed her room and eased the door open to check on her, nurse's habit. She was asleep on top of the made bed, not under the covers, still in her day clothes. Her sneakers stood side by side, tight against the bed frame, toes pointed at the door. I stood in that doorway a long time. I know packed and ready when I see it. I invented packed and ready. Her second weekend with me, I found it. Sunday morning, she was watching cartoons and I was vacuuming her room, and the vacuum head knocked against something under the bed. I got down on my knees and pulled it out. A pink backpack. Small, the kind they sell for kindergarten, zipped full. I shouldn't have opened it. I'm glad I did. 2 outfits, folded with a care that would shame most adults. A toothbrush in a sandwich bag, a box of raisins, and a stuffed rabbit with one ear worn down to the fabric, packed last on top, where it could be reached fast. She had brought a go-bag to her aunt's house for a weekend. I was still kneeling there when I felt her in the doorway. She didn't panic. She didn't even look surprised. She looked the way a kid looks when the teacher finds the note, resigned to explaining the obvious. She said, "I keep it packed so it doesn't hurt when they forget me somewhere." Level voice, reciting a house rule. And I knelt on that carpet holding the strap, and I was 18 again in an upstairs bedroom, folding 2 work polos and a plastic folder of documents into a bag because the people who were supposed to keep me had priced me out. My bag had been the end of my childhood. Hers was 6 years old and already packed. Same family, same luggage, 1 generation apart. I didn't turn that carpet into a scene, and I didn't make a speech, because a 6-year-old with a go-bag has no use for either. I zipped it back up, slid it exactly where it had been, and said, "Okay, we'll keep it packed for now. It's yours. Nobody touches it, and nobody forgets you here. But it stays your call, not theirs." She studied me for a second, nodded, and went back to her cartoons. The backpack stayed under the bed. Remember it. This whole story ends with that backpack. Over the next few weeks, in the low-stakes hours, braiding hair, 11 times champion cup drops, cartoons, Lily talked. Kids do, once the radar quiets. It came out sideways, in crumbs. That the Casino Friday wasn't the first time. That there had been other mommy's weekends since she was 5, where she was in charge of locking the door. That she knew how to make 3 dinners, cereal, toast, and cheese sandwich, no stove, because the stove was against the rules when she was alone. She said all of it the way she'd said the thing about the backpack. No drama, just logistics. I sat on my hands and kept my voice boring and my questions open, and inside my chest something was being signed in permanent ink. Here's the thing about my job. I'm a mandated reporter. When a child tells a nurse she's been left alone overnight, repeatedly, at 5 and 6 years old, the law doesn't offer me a family discount exemption. And here's the thing about me, the thing I'd decided in Alvarez's checklist voice weeks earlier. Daylight, or nothing. I called Alvarez Monday morning and reported it. Formally. She scheduled Lily with a child interview specialist, the kind with the soft room and the careful training, and Lily said it all again in her logistics voice. The county amended its case. Vanessa's plan got stricter. Parenting classes with attendance verified, visits moved to supervised only. And by June, with the home study cleared, Lily's placement moved officially to my apartment. My phone started ringing at 11 that same night, the landline number pulsing on the screen like a smoke alarm. I let it go twice. The third time I answered, and my mother's voice came through with no tears anywhere in it. "What did you tell them? What kind of sister are you?" What kind of sister are you? I wrote that one down too. The collection was growing. What followed was a 2-part campaign I could have diagrammed in advance, because I'd watched it run on other targets my whole childhood. Part 1. Honey. For 3 days, my mother was warmth itself. A chicken casserole appeared outside my apartment door with a note in her looping cursive about how proud she was of the woman I'd become. She texted me a photo of a page from the family album. Me at 9, holding baby Vanessa's old doll in one arm and a dustpan in the other. She meant it as nostalgia. As evidence, it was better than anything my lawyer would find later. Even the sweet talk told the truth, if you looked at what everyone in the pictures was holding. Then part 2. Right on schedule. Vinegar. Sunday dinner, the whole extended family, and my mother. I heard this from my cousin Beth, who called me after, half whispering, stood up over the pot roast and delivered the official version. Linda left home at 18 because she was selfish, broke her parents' hearts, and now, Lord willing, she'd been given one chance to redeem herself by helping her sister, and instead she was feeding the family to the government. Aunt June nodded along. 2 chairs down, my father passed the rolls and said nothing. I want to be honest about what that did to me, sitting alone in my kitchen picturing that table. It still burned. 23 years old, a badge, a license, a lease, and it still burned. But I'd learned something the county had been teaching me all spring. In that family, Whoever told the story owned the truth. In a courtroom, the storyteller has to swear in. Vanessa came to my apartment exactly once that summer, unannounced, on a Tuesday evening while Lily was at a supervised library program. She'd come without makeup, and it shocked me. She looked ironed flat, older than our mother somehow. And for the first time in my life, my sister sat at my table and said something true. She said, "You think I chose this?" She was looking at her own hands. "They decided I was helpless when I was 10, Linda. You don't remember because you were 6 and busy being the other thing. Nobody ever made me finish anything. Not school, not a job, not marriage, not—" And she tipped her chin at Lily's drawing on my refrigerator and couldn't say her own daughter's name in that sentence. "At least your role came with a spine. Mine came with an allowance." I sat very still, because I was watching the machine from a brand new angle, and it was the saddest view yet. 2 little girls, 1 house, 2 costumes handed down like sizes, mine stitched from responsibility, hers from helplessness, both fitted before either of us could read. For about 10 seconds I almost reached across the table. Then my sister, in the same breath, with the same tired eyes, showed me why the costume always wins. "So you owe me," she said, soft, reasonable. "Tell the caseworker Friday night was the first time. Tell them I had the flu, not the casino. They believe nurses. You're one of them. They'll take it from you." There it was. The honest minute was over. It had been an on-ramp. I said no. No explanation stapled to it, no apology cushioning it, and the older I get, the more I believe it was the first complete sentence of my adult life. Vanessa stood, gathered her purse and smiled a smile I knew from our mother's kitchen. "Then I guess I'll have to tell everyone what you've been doing." What I'd been doing, per the family broadcast that followed, was stealing a child to punish my sister out of jealousy. I let it roll off. Then September came. Lily started first grade at the elementary school 6 blocks from my apartment, and on the second Thursday of the school year, at 2:50 in the afternoon, my phone rang at work. The school office. A voice too casual for its own sentence. "Ms. Myers, just confirming. Lily was picked up early by her mother. That's authorized, correct?" The floor of the nurse's station tilted. It was not authorized. Vanessa was supervised only, and the school had the paperwork saying so, but the paperwork was in a folder, and the folder was only as strong as the newest clerk in the front office, and the woman at the desk that day saw a mother with a matching last name on the birth certificate and waved. I did not drive around the city like a movie. I stood in a supply closet with my heart slamming and did it by the book. Called Alvarez, called the non-emergency police line, gave plates, gave descriptions, said the words unauthorized removal and supervised visitation order. Then I did the hardest clinical skill I own. I waited. 4 hours. At 6:40 that evening, an officer called. Located, both safe, food court at the Eastland Mall. Vanessa had bought her a soft pretzel and a teddy bear, and when approached, she was genuinely bewildered by the fuss, because in her weather system it was just a mom treating her daughter to an afternoon out. Nobody's villain. That's what made it terrifying. When they brought Lily back to me that night, she walked straight past the new teddy bear on the counter, went into her room, and came out holding the pink backpack by both straps, hugging it against her chest like a life vest. Alvarez called at 9. Her checklist voice had something new in it, flat and final. "This changes the timeline, Linda, and temporary isn't going to protect her anymore." The county moved fast after the mall. Vanessa's visits were locked down to a supervised visitation center, 2 hours a week, a monitor in the room. The school got a new pickup card with photos on it, and the principal apologized to me for 11 minutes. I finally told her the clerk was the least broken part of the whole system. But the important conversation happened across my kitchen table, where Alvarez, folder open, explained what temporary actually meant, and I want you to hear it the way I heard it, because this is the fork in the whole road. As long as I was just a placement, the case stayed open, and open cases breathe. Every review, Vanessa got another chance to perform stability for 90 days. Every relative got standing to petition. My parents were already asking about returning to a family arrangement, their phrase. And there would be a hearing in the spring, and another after that, and Lily would live her whole childhood in 90-day increments, with a backpack under her bed, waiting for the weather to change. Then Alvarez squared her folder and said, "There is a longer road, if you're willing to walk it." She was talking about filing for legal custody myself, going from the county's address on file to Lily's actual court-ordered person. Petitioner. Party to the case. On the record. Under oath. Against my own family. In a building with a flag in every room. I asked her what happens to placements who stay temporary. She was quiet for a second, and Dana Alvarez was never quiet. "The ones like her," she said, "learn to keep the bag packed." I looked down the hallway at Lily's door. Some sentences don't persuade you. They just turn on the light in a room you were already standing in. Before I tell you what I filed, I have to tell you what that summer sounded like, because it's the exhibit nobody enters into evidence. It sounded like 2 cereal boxes hitting the table every morning, because I always gave her the choice. Choosing is a muscle, and hers had been in a cast her whole life. It sounded like a 2 a.m. nightmare, and my voice in the dark running the old nurse's drill, "Name 5 things you can see," and her small, furious concentration, "Lamp, rabbit, door, my hand, your hand." It sounded like the first time she laughed out loud. A cartoon moose, of all things. A big, unguarded honk of a laugh that startled us both, and then she looked at me to see if laughing that loud was allowed, and whatever she found in my face, she did it again. Louder. It sounded like her friend Maya from down the hall, and homework arguments, and me learning that first-grade spelling lists are hills worth dying on. The backpack stayed under the bed. I kept my word. I never touched it, and neither did she. And both of those facts mattered. But in August I heard the sound I've never told anyone about until right now. She was on the phone with Maya, describing her weekend, and she said, "At home, we made pancakes." Then she caught herself. I watched it happen, this little stutter of the mouth, and corrected it to, "At my aunt's home." And then, a few days later, talking to the rabbit while she cleaned her room, she didn't correct it. I stood in the hallway with a laundry basket, not breathing. You can't put that in a court file, so the court file would just have to catch up. In October, I sat in a legal aid office that smelled like burnt coffee, across from an attorney named Ruth Okafor, who charged on a sliding scale and wasted no words. My kind of person. We filed a petition for legal custody of Lily Cole in Franklin County Juvenile Court. And attached to it, sworn before a notary, was my affidavit. The whole pattern, in dates and numbers, no adjectives, the joint account, and the $9,300. The gift paper I refused to sign at 18. The door. The 5 years of silence, and then the phone call. Not to reconcile, but to rent my clean record. The plan my mother had laid out to me on the phone in her own cheerful words. The casino night, the earlier nights, the backpack under the bed. Ruth read my draft twice and looked up. "You understand what this does," she said. "It's not just testimony about Vanessa. It documents the household. Once it's filed, there's no version of this where you're the daughter who eventually comes home." I want to tell you I hesitated, because that would make me sound warmer. But the truth is, I thought about a 6-year-old correcting home to my aunt's home, like she'd been caught stealing, and I signed my name. And I noticed, the way you notice a scar in cold weather, that this was the second piece of paper my family's story had ever put in front of me. At 18, they slid me a lie and a pen, and staying in the family was the price of signing. At 23, I picked up my own pen and paid the same price in reverse. The lie would have kept me a daughter. The truth resigned the position permanently in triplicate. Ruth filed it on a Wednesday. The copies were served to Vanessa and, because of the custody arrangement they'd been petitioning for, to my parents. I'm told the phone at that house started ringing before the envelope hit the kitchen table. People ask me why I didn't just take a quiet arrangement, keep everybody comfortable. Here's the thing about quiet arrangements in my family. I was one, for 18 years. If you're still listening, you already know why that signature mattered. Comment, the packed backpack, if this story is landing somewhere real for you. And subscribe, because the hearing is where 12 years of swallowed sentences finally got said out loud into a microphone, under oath. The family went to war the way respectable families do. No bullets, all narrative. My Aunt June called to inform me that suing your own blood was a sin she personally could never imagine. 2 cousins unfollowed me, which I survived. My mother's church circle added Lily to the prayer list. Beth read me the wording, asking the Lord to soften the heart of the troubled young woman holding her niece hostage from her rightful family. Holding her hostage. With a library card and a booster seat. But the visit that took something out of me came on a Thursday in late October. A knock, and through the peephole. My father. First time in 5 years. He wouldn't come in. He stood in my apartment hallway with his cap in his hands, looking past my shoulder at the kids' drawings on the refrigerator, and he said his piece like a man reciting something he'd practiced in the truck. I know it wasn't right. What happened with your money? 5 years, and there it finally was, at the exact moment it could be spent on something. But your mother can't lose 2 daughters, Linda. Drop the affidavit, settle it private, keep it in the family. I asked him one question. I kept my voice as level as a countertop. Dad, was it right or wrong, what you all did? Yes or no? And my father, 58 years old, 35 of them married to the weather system that ran our house, looked down at my doormat and said, "That's not the point." There it is, I thought. That is precisely, forensically, the point. He left an envelope on the hall table on his way out. No letter. 2 $20 bills. $40. The second installment. 5 years after the first. My father's entire vocabulary. And it still wasn't a sentence. November came at me in documents. Ruth and I built the file the way you'd build a case chart. Exhibits tabbed. Timeline clean. The ATM receipt from 5 years ago came out of my plastic folder, uncreased once, and Ruth held it up and looked at me over her glasses. You kept this? I told her I'd carried it out of that house in a backpack the night I left. She put it under a tab without another word, but she typed faster after that. I want to be honest about what building that affidavit cost, because the pages look clinical and the writing of them was not. There is a specific kind of ache in typing your childhood into numbered paragraphs. Seeing 18 years shrink down to Exhibit C, feeling how small it looks and how much it weighed. Some nights I'd close the laptop and stand in the shower until the water went cold. But here's a strange mercy from my profession. Nurses chart symptoms, not feelings. Onset, duration, frequency. It turns out that's the exact language a courtroom trusts, and I'd been trained in it for years without knowing why. One night, deep in the drafting, I walked past Lily's room and stopped, the way I had that first weekend. She was asleep under the covers. Under them, blanket to her chin, one arm flung out over the edge with the boneless confidence of a kid who expects the bed to still be hers in the morning. Her sneakers were in the closet. I stood in the hallway holding a laundry basket and let the water run down my face for a minute, and then I went back to the laptop and finished the paragraph about the casino, because progress in my line of work is measured small. 8 days before the hearing, Vanessa got a lawyer. My parents paid for him. Of course they did. There is always money in that family, the way there's always water somewhere in a desert. It just never surfaces on my side of the property line. He called Ruth with a settlement proposal, and Ruth relayed it to me across her desk in her flattest translation voice. They would agree to my custody. Uncontested. Sign it tomorrow. In exchange, Vanessa's visitation goes unsupervised, effective immediately, and I withdraw the affidavit. All of it. The account, the door, the pattern, the household, from the record. Scrubbed. As if unsworn. Their phrasing, Ruth said, is that the family doesn't need old stories in a public file. I sat with it, and I'll tell you the truth. It wasn't nothing. Ruth said so too. Trials are dice, and this handed me custody without rolling them. I'd have Lily, legally, tomorrow. All I had to do was let the record lie about the machine and hand the machine 2 unsupervised days a week to run on a 6-year-old. I asked Ruth one question, a nurse's question. Unsupervised? Starting when? She checked the letter. Immediately. And I saw it, clear as a chart trend. Some ordinary Friday in February. A treat, an errand, a boyfriend, a casino across the county line, and a first grader locking a door behind her mother because those were the rules when she was alone. And under some future bed, a bag, repacked. I told Ruth I'd answer by Monday, and I drove home the long way, and that night, while I stood at the stove not cooking anything, the phone rang. The house line. My mother had one card left, and she played it beautifully. No tears this time. That's how I knew it was the real offensive. My mother saved her dry voice for closing. Linda, sweetheart. Sweetheart, a word I hadn't heard aimed at me since grade school, and I hated what it did to my chest. She talked for a long time, and she was good, because everything she offered was a real thing that had really been withheld. Come home, she said. Sunday dinners, Christmas morning. You and Lily both. Stockings on the rail. Your room is still your room. Vanessa will sign whatever the lawyers want. We can be a family again, honey. All of it. Starting Thursday. All you have to do is take the old stories out of the file. That's all. Families don't need judges, Linda. They just need one person big enough to let the past go. And I stood at my stove, 23 years old, holding the phone with both hands, and I am going to tell you the whole truth, even though it's the least flattering sentence in this story. I wanted it. Every cell. 12 years I'd been standing outside the glass of that family watching the light on in the kitchen, and here was my mother, holding the door open at last, and the room behind her was warm, and it was real. And the price tag was hanging exactly where it always hangs in that house. The truth, retracted. The record, scrubbed. And the bill for all that warmth quietly forwarded, as always, to the smallest person in the family. This time a 6-year-old with a go-bag. My mother said my name again, gently, the way you coax someone off a ledge. So, we'll see you Thursday? And you'll take care of that paperwork? I closed my eyes. I'll see you Thursday, Mom, I said, and I hung up before she could hear which sentence I hadn't said. The rooms where lives change are always uglier than you'd think. Franklin County Juvenile Court, Thursday, 8:40 in the morning. Waxed linoleum, fluorescent light with a faint insect buzz, an American flag gone dusty at the fringe, and a hallway of blue plastic chairs holding other families having the worst morning of other years. Lily was at school, where 6-year-olds belong during hearings. Maya's mom had pickup covered either way, because I plan for outcomes. It's the job. Our side of the hallway. Ruth, in gray. Alvarez with her folders. Lily's guardian ad litem, a retired teacher who'd interviewed us twice. Their side, arriving in a procession I heard before a retired teacher who'd interviewed us twice. Their side, arriving in a procession I heard before I saw. Vanessa in a small floral dress I'd have bet money our mother chose. The costume of the role fitted one more time. My mother in church clothes, chin high, gripping my father's arm. My father in the suit he wears to funerals. Before the courtroom, there was one more stop. A conference room where the lawyers put the settlement on the table for the record, one last time. Formica table, humming vent, a printed agreement squared in front of an empty chair, and a pen laid on top of it. Diagonal, presentational, the way the gift paper had been laid out on a kitchen table 5 years and 2 lifetimes ago. My family does love setting a table for me. My mother looked at me across it, and for a second, I'll give her this. The look wasn't tactical. It was just her, asking. Vanessa's lawyer cleared his throat. Ms. Myers, have you considered our proposal? The vent hummed. Ruth's pen hovered over her legal pad. Everyone in that room waited to hear which daughter had walked in, and I opened my mouth. No, I said. The affidavit stays in. Everything I have to say about my family, I'll say under oath, in the open, with everyone listening. That's the only kind of family conversation I do now. Nobody had a countermove, because there isn't one. You can outmaneuver a scheme. There's no lever on a person who has stopped negotiating in the dark. My mother's face closed like a shop for the night. We went in. Juvenile hearings are not television. No jury box drama, just a tired judge, a court reporter, and the slow machinery of questions. When my turn came, I put my hand up, swore, and testified the way Ruth had coached me and the way I'd charted my whole career. Onset, duration, frequency. The joint account, dated. The $9,300, dated. The gift paper and the door, dated. 5 years of no contact. I named the birthdays. Then the phone call, and the plan for my address, in my mother's own wording. Then Lily, the casino night from the county file, the earlier nights from the child interview, and the pink backpack under the bed of a first grader who kept it stocked with raisins and a rabbit so it wouldn't hurt when they forgot her somewhere. The courtroom air changed on the backpack. It always does. Grand betrayals impress people, but the small logistics of a child's fear will bend a room at the waist. Vanessa's lawyer came at me on cross with the family script, almost word for word, and I watched the judge notice its vintage. Isn't it true you've resented your sister for years, and this petition is your revenge? I let the question sit a beat. If I wanted revenge, I said, I'd have stayed away. Staying away was working fine. And that's when the script did the one thing I never could have engineered. It read itself aloud. Vanessa stood up at counsel table over her own lawyer's hand on her sleeve and cried out to the judge, to the room, to the flag. She's the strong one. She was always supposed to be the one who handles things. The gavel came down. But it was already in the record. My family's operating system testified to, in open court, by its favorite child. Near the end, the judge took off his glasses and asked me the question under all the others. Ms. Myers, you're 23, single, shift work, first year in your career. Explain to me why you're asking this court for a child. I looked at my mother for 1 second. She was sitting very straight, purse on her lap like a shield, and I realized I'd been waiting 12 years to answer a question she had never once asked me. Then I turned back to the judge and answered him instead. Slowly, because I only wanted to say it once. All my life I was told I was the strong one, and in my family, strong just meant the one who pays. I've paid in money, and I've paid in years, and I'm done being strong like that. What Lily needs isn't the strong one, it's something better. I'd rather be the one who stays. The court reporter's keys ticked it into permanence, and the quiet after was the loudest thing my family ever gave me. Then a chair scraped. The loudest sound in the story. I mean that. And my mother stood up in the middle of the gallery. She didn't shout. Shouting I'd have known what to do with. She smoothed her church skirt, took up her purse and said, in the dry closing voice, to me and to the room, and to the record. You were born cold, Linda. Keep the child. You've finally taken everything. And she walked out. My father stood in stages, the way he does, and followed her. And at the door he turned and looked back at me for 1 second. One. And I have spent years deciding what was in that look, and have settled on this. It was an apology, sized exactly like $40. The door eased shut on its piston hinge. No slam. That house always did prefer a quiet exit. I sat still in my chair, hands folded, and did not go after them. You have no idea what it cost, and you have no idea what it bought. I had just won my daughter-to-be and lost my mother, in the same 60 seconds, in front of strangers, under a dusty flag. Both permanent, both mine. What was left went quickly, the way the important part of a surgery is somehow the quietest. The guardian ad litem, the retired teacher, read her recommendation in a steady classroom voice. Placement with the aunt should be made permanent. The child was thriving. And then, closing her folder, she added the phrase, I will keep until I die. In this observer's opinion, The child has finally unpacked. She had no idea what she'd said. Or maybe she had every idea. Teachers usually do. Alvarez testified to a stable placement and a completed home study. Checklist flat. And when the judge asked her assessment of me, she read from the note she'd taken at my kitchen table back in April. The long one, about why I left home at 18. So that's what the note turned into. I could have kissed her clipboard. And the judge granted it. Legal custody of Lily Cole to Linda Myers. Vanessa's visitation stayed supervised, with a written case plan attached, a real ladder back if she ever chose to climb it, classes and clean months and consistency, the same ladder offered to every parent in that building. I want that noted. The court left her a door, and so did I. Some machines you break, people, you leave a ladder. Outside, the November sky over Columbus was the color of a nickel. I sat in my car in the courthouse parking garage, the same driver's seat where I'd laughed until my ribs hurt back in March. And this time I cried for about 90 seconds. One hand on the wheel, the other on the folder with the order in it. Then I blew my nose, fixed nothing about my face, and drove to Lincoln Elementary, because it was 2:40 and the pickup line forms early. Some doors close in a courtroom. The door that mattered was the passenger door of a Honda, opening at 2:55 for a kid with her hood up against the drizzle, asking what's for dinner. Here's the aftermath, measured honestly, because this channel doesn't sell lightning bolts. Vanessa came to the visitation center twice in December. In January she came once, late. By spring, some months she didn't come at all. And I'd sit in the center's parking lot with Lily's booster in the back seat, working out what to say, and Lily would buckle herself in and say it for me. Mommy forgot again. Logistics voice, but quieter every time, and then one day, not quieter. Just done. A fact filed under other facts. My sister isn't a monster. I need you to hear that from me and not the internet. She is what that house built. A woman handed helplessness as a job description at 10 years old, and nobody ever taught her to finish anything, so she doesn't. The ladder the court left her is still bolted to the wall. She has never put a foot on it. My mother sent one card that first winter, cream-colored, her looping cursive steady as ever. When you're ready to apologize, we are ready to forgive you. I read it twice at the kitchen counter, and then I put it in the plastic folder, the one I'd carried out of that house at 18, right behind a 5-year-old ATM receipt for a balance of $0.00. Same handwriting on the ledger, if you know how to read it. I never wrote back. The invoice finally reached a customer who'd closed the account. And then, there was the evening in late spring, an ordinary Tuesday, spaghetti on the stove, spelling homework on the table when Lily put down her pencil, walked to her room without a word, and came back dragging the pink backpack by one strap. I stopped stirring. She unzipped it on the living room floor like a surgeon opening a case, and then, businesslike, she dismantled it. The 2 folded outfits went into her dresser, 3rd drawer. The toothbrush in the sandwich bag went to the bathroom cup. The raisins went to her food shelf, the one with the blue stickers. Last, the rabbit with the worn ear came out and took up his new post on her pillow, facing the door, on guard duty at last instead of on standby. Then she hung the empty backpack on her doorknob and came back to her spelling like nothing had happened. I stood at that stove with the spoon in my hand and my back to her for a full minute, because the rule in my house is that nobody performs their feelings at a 7-year-old. When I could talk, I said, "You don't have to be the strong one, Lily. You don't have to be the fragile one either. You just have to be Lily." She thought about it the way kids consider the obvious. "Okay," she said. "Can I have more noodles?" That was the whole ceremony. 7 years on, I'm 30, and the girl with the go bag is 13 and argues with me about phone hours like it's her paid profession, and slams her door over curfew, and hollers that I'm ruining her life, and every unremarkable, mouthy, gloriously ordinary minute of it is the trophy. The backpack holds pool towels now. She packs it in June, for swim season. Because she wants to. That's the entire difference, and it took 2 generations to buy. 12 years taught me this. In some families, "you're the strong one" is not a compliment. It's an invoice. And the day you stop paying it isn't the day you stop loving your family. It's the first day you love someone, including yourself, the honest way, with both eyes open and the lights on. That's my story. One drained bank account, one packed pink backpack, and one sentence finally said out loud, under oath, into the record. If somebody in your life calls you the strong one right before handing you the bill, take this as your sign. You're allowed to say no and still be good. If this story felt familiar, share. A retired teacher who'd interviewed us twice. Their side, arriving in a procession I heard before I saw. Vanessa in a small floral dress I'd have bet money our mother chose. The costume of the role fitted one more time. My mother in church clothes, chin high, gripping my father's arm. My father in the suit he wears to funerals. Before the courtroom, there was one more stop. A conference room where the lawyers put the settlement on the table for the record, one last time. Formica table, humming vent, a printed agreement squared in front of an empty chair, and a pen laid on top of it. Diagonal, presentational, the way the gift paper had been laid out on a kitchen table 5 years and 2 lifetimes ago. My family does love setting a table for me. My mother looked at me across it, and for a second, I'll give her this. The look wasn't tactical. It was just her, asking. Vanessa's lawyer cleared his throat. Ms. Myers, have you considered our proposal? The vent hummed. Ruth's pen hovered over her legal pad. Everyone in that room waited to hear which daughter had walked in, and I opened my mouth. No, I said. The affidavit stays in. Everything I have to say about my family, I'll say under oath, in the open, with everyone listening. That's the only kind of family conversation I do now. Nobody had a countermove, because there isn't one. You can outmaneuver a scheme. There's no lever on a person who has stopped negotiating in the dark. My mother's face closed like a shop for the night. We went in. Juvenile hearings are not television. No jury box drama, just a tired judge, a court reporter, and the slow machinery of questions. When my turn came, I put my hand up, swore, and testified the way Ruth had coached me and the way I'd charted my whole career. Onset, duration, frequency. The joint account, dated. The $9,300, dated. The gift paper and the door, dated. 5 years of no contact. I named the birthdays. Then the phone call, and the plan for my address, in my mother's own wording. Then Lily, the casino night from the county file, the earlier nights from the child interview, and the pink backpack under the bed of a first grader who kept it stocked with raisins and a rabbit so it wouldn't hurt when they forgot her somewhere. The courtroom air changed on the backpack. It always does. Grand betrayals impress people, but the small logistics of a child's fear will bend a room at the waist. Vanessa's lawyer came at me on cross with the family script, almost word for word, and I watched the judge notice its vintage. Isn't it true you've resented your sister for years, and this petition is your revenge? I let the question sit a beat. If I wanted revenge, I said, I'd have stayed away. Staying away was working fine. And that's when the script did the one thing I never could have engineered. It read itself aloud. Vanessa stood up at counsel table over her own lawyer's hand on her sleeve and cried out to the judge, to the room, to the flag. She's the strong one. She was always supposed to be the one who handles things. The gavel came down. But it was already in the record. My family's operating system testified to, in open court, by its favorite child. Near the end, the judge took off his glasses and asked me the question under all the others. Ms. Myers, you're 23, single, shift work, first year in your career. Explain to me why you're asking this court for a child. I looked at my mother for 1 second. She was sitting very straight, purse on her lap like a shield, and I realized I'd been waiting 12 years to answer a question she had never once asked me. Then I turned back to the judge and answered him instead. Slowly, because I only wanted to say it once. All my life I was told I was the strong one, and in my family, strong just meant the one who pays. I've paid in money, and I've paid in years, And I'm done being strong like that. What Lily needs isn't the strong one. It's something better. I'd rather be the one who stays. The court reporter's keys ticked it into permanence, and the quiet after was the loudest thing my family ever gave me. Then a chair scraped. The loudest sound in the story. I mean that. And my mother stood up in the middle of the gallery. She didn't shout. Shouting I'd have known what to do with. She smoothed her church skirt, took up her purse and said, in the dry closing voice, to me and to the room, and to the record, "You were born cold, Linda. Keep the child. You've finally taken everything." And she walked out. My father stood in stages, the way he does, and followed her. And at the door he turned and looked back at me for 1 second. One. And I have spent years deciding what was in that look, and have settled on this. It was an apology, sized exactly like $40. The door eased shut on its piston hinge. No slam. That house always did prefer a quiet exit. I sat still in my chair, hands folded, and did not go after them. You have no idea what it cost, and you have no idea what it bought. I had just won my daughter-to-be and lost my mother, in the same 60 seconds, in front of strangers, under a dusty flag. Both permanent, both mine. What was left went quickly, the way the important part of a surgery is somehow the quietest. The guardian ad litem, the retired teacher, read her recommendation in a steady classroom voice. Placement with the aunt should be made permanent. The child was thriving. And then, closing her folder, she added the phrase, "I will keep until I die." In this observer's opinion, the child has finally unpacked. She had no idea what she'd said. Or maybe she had every idea. Teachers usually do. Alvarez testified to a stable placement and a completed home study, checklist flat. And when the judge asked her assessment of me, she read from the note she'd taken at my kitchen table back in April, the long one, about why I left home at 18. So that's what the note turned into. I could have kissed her clipboard. And the judge granted it. Legal custody of Lily Cole to Linda Myers. Vanessa's visitation stayed supervised, with a written case plan attached, a real ladder back if she ever chose to climb it, classes and clean months and consistency, the same ladder offered to every parent in that building. I want that noted. The court left her a door, and so did I. Some machines you break, people, you leave a ladder. Outside, the November sky over Columbus was the color of a nickel. I sat in my car in the courthouse parking garage, the same driver's seat where I'd laughed until my ribs hurt back in March. And this time I cried for about 90 seconds. One hand on the wheel, the other on the folder with the order in it. Then I blew my nose, fixed nothing about my face, and drove to Lincoln Elementary, because it was 2:40 and the pickup line forms early. Some doors close in a courtroom. The door that mattered was the passenger door of a Honda, opening at 2:55 for a kid with her hood up against the drizzle, asking what's for dinner. Here's the aftermath, measured honestly, because this channel doesn't sell lightning bolts. Vanessa came to the visitation center twice in December. In January she came once, late. By spring, some months she didn't come at all. And I'd sit in the center's parking lot with Lily's booster in the back seat, working out what to say, and Lily would buckle herself in and say it for me. Mommy forgot again. Logistics voice, but quieter every time, and then one day, not quieter. Just done. A fact filed under other facts. My sister isn't a monster. I need you to hear that from me and not the internet. She is what that house built. A woman handed helplessness as a job description at 10 years old, and nobody ever taught her to finish anything, so she doesn't.